Before starting this video, I do want to give a shout out to my patrons that support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you if you want to look at the Patreon link down below. So with that out of the way, let's get into this week's video. What's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on PupStomp MTG. Glad to have you here today. Today we're going to be looking at Chiss-Goria Forged Tyrant. So when I first saw this commander, I wasn't too impressed, but the more I looked at it, the more crazy this card can be for your artifact decks. As a commander itself, it's pretty powerful, having affinity for artifact itself, and it does have flying and haste, and whenever Chiss-Goria Forged Tyrant attacks, exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast an artifact spell from among them this turn. If you do, it has affinity for artifacts. So this commander is actually a reference to the old cards Scale of Chiss-Goria and Tooth of Chiss-Goria. I was hoping this would be an artifact dragon, but honestly that doesn't matter. This card is really amazing, and especially for that affinity for artifacts, we could essentially reduce this card to 3 red mana. So there's a lot of ways we could build around this commander, especially if we're going to be focusing on that artifact support. We want to make sure we can make our commander cheap and to make our spells even cheaper from exile. I would say, however, there's one downside to this commander. When you exile the top 5 cards of your library, you're going to only cast one of those artifact spells from among them. So say for example you have some sorceries you want to play, we want to make sure that we can play them. However, they will be exiled permanently unless we have something that would help us along the way, like Karn. So Karn the Great Creator is absolutely a great card in here. It's a great stacks piece against your opponents playing artifacts, but on top of that, you may choose an artifact you own from outside the game or an exile, reveal that card and put it into your hand. So say for example we exiled a lot of cards because of Chiss-Goria attacking, we could get one of those artifacts back into our hand because of Karn. That's the biggest reason why I added it. However, if you want to be extra mean, you could add Mycosynth Lattice in here because all permanents are artifacts into addition of their other types. So obviously with Karn the Great Creator, this is just a combo right here so that your opponents can't play the game because all your permanents that your opponents have are going to be artifacts. However, it's going to be a benefit for us on top of that because Chiss-Goria is going to have affinity for artifacts, so it'll reduce the cost because of Mycosynth Lattice. So this is definitely a brutal move if you want to play it. If you don't, that's completely fine. I don't blame you right there. However, we're going to dive into Exile because we're playing cards from Exile. We want to also focus in on that instead of just leaning totally on artifacts. I'm going to talk about artifacts in a little bit, but we do have Lilia, the Blade Forge. Since we're going to be playing cards from Exile, she's just going to get bigger and bigger each time we play cards from Exile. So just a great option right here if you want to have a threat on the board. I did also want to put Capricious Hellkite in here as well. It's more for just because it's a cool dragon in here, but it does have a great enter the battlefield trigger. When it enters the battlefield, exile 3 cards at random from your graveyard, choose a non-creature, non-land card from it among them and copy it. You may cast those copies without paying its mana cost. It's going to do a decent amount of work in here because we do have a lot of non-creature spells in here that we could cast from the graveyard. However, we do also have an absolute include in here with Professional Facebreaker. Essentially, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage, you create a treasure token. So that'll help with the affinity for our commander. And you can also sacrifice some treasure so that you can get some more card advantage from exile. You don't even have to attack with this card. You can attack with our commander right here because it does have evasion with flying. So you can keep on swinging, getting some more treasure, and getting more affinity. However, there's some great effects playing from exile. Say for example we do have Nashifini. This is just a great card overall in here because when you cast a spell from exile, you copy it. You may choose a new target for that copy. If it's a permanent spell, that copy gains haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this permanent. So say for example you played a Blightsteel Colossus. From exile, you make another token of it, swinging with haste. Absolutely great value right there. Because we're playing a lot of high CMC spells from exile, like Blightsteel Colossus, we do have Wild Magic Sorcerer. This is just a great card overall because the first spell you cast from exile each turn has Cascade. This will just give us so much value off of our Cascade triggers. However, if we want to push the value engine even further, we do also have some great damage enablers from exile. Say for example, we have Keeper of Secrets and Passionate Archaeologist on the battlefield. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Keeper of Secrets deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. So we're casting from exile right there. Same thing with Passionate Archaeologist. Just a great card overall because we're going to do definitely a lot of damage because we have a lot of high CMC cards, again, like Blightsteel Colossus. So we're going to do a lot of damage off of those triggers. However, let's go into some artifacts you definitely want to add into this list. I focused on utility artifacts mostly because that's what you really want in this deck, is a lot of great value off of your artifacts. So we have great utility artifacts like Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter, Vidalcanori, and Shimmermere. These are all great because it has that ability of playing artifact spells with flash. I mean, Vidalcanori, you can play anything with flash, but especially with all of these give that great ability so that when we exile the top cards of our library with our commander, we can play them with flash. We don't have that stipulation of playing them until the end of turn. We can play them right away and with a big splashy effect. We do want to make sure that we have some great top deck manipulation like Sensei's Divining Top and Scroll Rack. So say for example we want to play that artifact in our hand, but we can't because it's too expensive. It doesn't have affinity for artifacts because only when we attack with Chiss-Goria, because Chiss-Goria does have that ability, exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast an artifact spell from among them this turn. If you do, it has affinity for artifacts. So we can't have affinity for artifacts in our hand. Only one of those 5 cards we exiled will have affinity for artifacts. So that's why it's super important to have Sensei's Divining Top and Scroll Rack in the deck so that we can have that top deck manipulation so that we can make sure we get an artifact that we want to play with affinity. Another crucial card in any mono red deck that I absolutely include is Liquid Metal Torque. This is absolutely perfect because it adds as a mana rock, as a 2 mana rock. That's absolutely perfect right there. And on top of that, target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. This adds great utility for removal. Say for example we have a Braid in our hand and we want to get rid of a permanent like a Rhystic Study or a Vorinclex. We can make those permanents into artifacts in addition of their other types, and then we could use a Braid to destroy that artifact because they're made into artifacts because of Liquid Metal Torque. Just a great overall option in here just for a little bit of removal. We do have a lot of artifact removal in this deck, so definitely just a great card overall in your mono red decks. However, let's take our focus and let's talk about big beefy artifacts because there's a lot of artifacts that have great effects and we could reduce them almost to 0. So we do have some colorless artifacts like Platinum Empyrean and Platinum Angel. Essentially, your life total can't change and you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. Just essentially just great cards overall. We could reduce these to almost 0 and cast them for free essentially because of affinity with our commander right here. I just like these cards a lot because they have a great effect right there. And why not add the fun even further with Portal to Phyrexia, essentially being a little board wipe. Each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures when it enters the battlefield, and on top of that it reanimates a target creature from a graveyard. So this card could definitely provide us a lot of value, and especially if we get it down to 0 with the affinity off of our commander right here. Absolutely great card in here, no doubt. We do also have Blightsteel Colossus, which is just a game ender by itself. We could reduce the cost basically to 0 again because of our commander if we have enough artifacts on the battlefield. But getting a Blightsteel on the Colossus means death for an opponent unless they have like a Swords to Plowshares or something like that. But in most cases, Blightsteel Colossus is really hard to deal with. Also, I do want to stress the importance of having a Wincon in your deck because you want to make sure you could win in another way, just in case if you're down in luck. But we do have a great Wincon with Hellkite Tyrant right here. Essentially, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. This is an artifact deck. We're going to have a lot of artifacts on the battlefield. It's just another great Wincon in here. And on top of that, whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you gain control of all artifacts that player controls. So just that alone, that could give us a great affinity for our artifacts that we are playing from Exile. So this is definitely a no-brainer of a card to add to this list because it's just a great Wincon overall if you want to add it in there. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on this very awesome artifact-centric dragon with Chiss-Goria Forged Tyrant. So sharing some of my thoughts, I feel like this is going to be a pretty fun commander. I feel like definitely the big downside of this commander is you're going to have a lot of cards exiled because of this commander right here. So I'd just be wary of that. Just again, reminder, definitely add in Karn, the Great Creator, in here so that you could get cards from Exile. Just an FYI. However, let me know down below, what are your thoughts on this commander? Do you feel like it's a great commander for artifacts? Do you feel like there's better ones out there? Let me know down below in the comments. I will say I am a big dragon guy. I try to make a lot of dragon decks because they're one of my favorite creatures in all fantasies. So I feel like this is just going to be a fun commander overall to play. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on some of my videos. I do a lot of deck techs on different commanders. If there's a card that you want to see as a commander in a deck tech, let me know down below in the comments. And with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.